Sometime at the end of 1996 or in 1997, I found the teaching of the American organization Summit Lighthouse. Before then, I had never heard anything about the fall of the angels or Lucifer. And when I visited their seminar and heard this teaching, I was elated because I thought I found the answer to the question that bothered me. Why is everything around us not as good as it should be? And I realized that there is someone who bears full responsibility for all the mess that is going on around me. I thought that it would be very good to give people this teaching and to talk about this teaching as much as possible. People just do not know about it. And that is why everything around them is so bad. I then even tried to write a few chapters for a book, which got included in the book Good and Evil. These are the first two chapters, the rebellion of Lucifer and the fall of mankind. Approximately in the fall of 2002, which was a very difficult time for me, I was going through very serious trials and tests. And I was meditating at that time. And during the meditation, thoughts began to come to me. Things aren't exactly the way that you understand them in the teaching about Lucifer. Lucifer is not so bad. Look, this is interesting. In 1998, I found this teaching, and in 2002, only 4 years later, I no longer perceived another point of view that came from within me. That is the knowledge that came from within me. I was told, you got it all wrong. But I rejected that and said, no, I do not want to hear this. And then I was left alone for about 1 year. In the fall of 2003, the same thing happened. There were amazing meditations, and the great beings came, such as Lord Surya, Lord Sanat Kumara, and Lord Alpha. And these were quite unique meditations, when I was experiencing such states that I do not experience now. That is, the masters began to work with me very closely. The thoughts about Lucifer began to come to me again. You do not understand everything about Lucifer the way it is. And there was one meditation when Lord Alpha came and told me a phrase that struck me on the spot. He said, in fact, you are Lucifer in the embodiment. But I know about myself that I am not bad, that I am good. But why am I Lucifer? Isn't he bad? This enigma got me seriously thinking about this subject. This one phrase that Lord Alpha said, in fact, you are Lucifer in the embodiment, began to expand my consciousness. And about a year went by, and I went to Altai for about a week. It was my vacation. At that time, I was working as a chief accountant. And when getting ready for the trip, I asked the masters, what book should I take to read? And they answered, you should take the second volume of the Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. When I got there, I would walk away from the place where the recreation center was located. I would sit somewhere in this area. I walked more than a kilometer away from the people, and I sat on the bank of the Katun River. I would sit there and read the second volume of the Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. I must say that I had read the first volume before. It was sometime in the year 1991 or 1992. I had made it all the way through the first volume, but understood nothing, absolutely nothing. And I thought that the second volume might not be a better one. But since the masters told me to read this book, I began to read it. So I went to a place where there were no people. It turns out that it is very important to get into an environment where there are no people around for a great distance. I would sit there and read, and I could not tear myself away from this book. To me, it was like a romance novel or a detective mystery. That is, I was eagerly reading the book. The reading was breathtaking. I could understand everything that was written there, and I cried because of the truth that I read there. I just cried, and I thought, my God, what fools we are. Myself included, of course. And when I returned to Omsk, more miracles began to happen to me. The masters had told me before that I would be fired from my job in August. And August was coming to an end. And when I went to my work on the 31st of August, I got fired. But this was not a tragedy for me at that time, because I understood that the work that I had to do was the primary work. It was absolutely breathtaking, and I wanted to share with people the revelations that came to me when I was reading the second volume of the Secret Doctrine. By then, I already had the Sirius newsletter and the Sirius website. And I had about 100 subscribers to the newsletter and about the same number of people visiting the site every day. I began to meditate, and during the meditation, I experienced very important moments. The information was transmitted in blocks, but I did not realize that these were dictations. I did not understand that I could receive dictations. But immediately after I finished the meditation, I could not calm down until I wrote the text on the computer. And then I had to send it through a newsletter immediately. This was the main condition. That is, the masters were preparing me for receiving the dictations, and sending out the dictations on the same day was one of the conditions. Thus, I would write only one chapter, and then I would immediately send it out and put it on the website. Then I would write a second chapter and also send it out and put it on the website. Thus, there was no book. It was just being written by itself. But the worst thing was that when I returned to Omsk, I opened the second volume of the Secret Doctrine and I began to read it again. I no longer understood what was written there. For me, it was absolute gibberish. But how could I write about things that I did not understand? Then I found a solution. There is an abandoned park on the other bank of the Irtysh River. I would go there, and there was nobody in the park. It was in the fall, late September or early October, and there was nobody in the park. And I would sit there, and after a while I would begin to understand the meaning again. Then I would select quotations. I would mark the page and the paragraph, the page and the paragraph. And when I came home, I would just link all of the parts using an electronic version of the Secret Doctrine. Then I would meditate, and I would be given the sequence in which the material was to be organized. It is interesting that when I had received all of the same information from within myself, I did not believe it. But when I read all the same material outside, then I began to believe it. I was really afraid to publish a newsletter on this topic, because I knew that most people did not think in the way that was written there. But it was a necessary condition, and that was a form of a test. And when I fulfilled what the masters asked me to do, I was given the opportunity for further work. And if I had said back then, I do not want to hear any of this anymore, then there would be no dictations or the mantle of the messenger, and the masters would never continue to work with me. That is why this book, Good and Evil, is the most important of all the books, and it is the key book. I hope you will have the strength to overcome yourselves and sit through the end of this seminar. Actually, it is very hard to do. I don't know how you can do it. But maybe you can endure it. But I hope that the masters will do something, and our consciousness, our collective consciousness, will be raised a little, and we will be able to understand and feel something on another level. The Secret Doctrine was written in 1888. In 1888, all of this information was already written 122 years ago, and humanity is in no hurry to change their consciousness. Such is the inertness of mindset.